The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched before Ambassador Deho like a vast metal cathedral. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose in tiers around the central floor, their eyes, in all shapes and colors, focused on the lone human standing in the middle of the room. Deho kept his face calm. His hands stayed at his sides. He had been in this position many times before, but never with stakes this high. The air recyclers hummed quietly overhead, mixing the breathing gases needed by dozens of different species. The smell was strange and sharp, like metal and ozone. Chancellor Veltarn rose from the highest seat. The tall alien's blue skin seemed to glow under the harsh lights. His forearms moved in the formal gesture that meant final judgment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 12 civilizations. Human Ambassador Deho, of the species called humanity, you stand before this council as representative of your kind. The charges against your species have been reviewed. The evidence has been examined. The decision is final. Deho nodded once. I am listening, Chancellor. The chamber fell silent. Even the usual whispers and shuffling sounds stopped. Veltarn's large eyes never left the human's face. Your species has violated 17 colonization treaties. You have established settlements in restricted zones. You have ignored our warnings to cease expansion. Your growth threatens the established order of this galaxy. Around the chamber, other council members made sounds of agreement. The hegemony's war leader, a massive creature covered in scales, slammed his fist on his seat's armrest. The collective's speaker, a being made of living crystal, chimed in harmony with others of her kind. Deho said nothing. He had heard these charges before. Most of them were true, though the council's version left out important details, like how humans had only colonized worlds that were empty, like how they had tried to follow the rules, even when those rules seemed designed to keep humanity trapped in their small corner of space. The penalty for these violations is clear, Veltarn continued. Total withdrawal from all contested sectors. You have 1 standard year to remove every human presence from space beyond your home system. Every colony, every research station, every military outpost. All of it. The Chancellor paused. His voice grew colder. If humanity fails to comply completely, this council will authorize the use of all necessary force to ensure compliance. This includes the complete destruction of human civilization if required. Murmurs of approval echoed through the chamber. Some of the alien representatives looked pleased. Others seemed bored, as if this was just another routine matter. A few appeared uncomfortable, but they stayed silent. Deho studied the faces around him. These beings represented the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The hegemony controlled 300 star systems. The collective had colonies in 1,000 worlds. Even the smallest council member ruled more territory than all of humanity, combined. The numbers were simple. Humanity held 12 star systems. The council held thousands. Human ships were outnumbered 50 to 1. Human technology was centuries behind theirs. By every logical measure, resistance was impossible. What is your response, Ambassador? Veltarn asked. Deho took a breath. The weight of his entire species rested on his next words. Every human alive would live or die based on this moment. He thought of Earth, green and blue and beautiful. He thought of the colonies, full of families and children and dreams. He thought of the research stations where scientists worked to unlock the secrets of the universe. Then he thought of something else, something the council did not know, Something that changed everything. Humanity accepts your terms, he said quietly. The silence stretched longer this time. Several council members leaned forward as if they had not heard correctly. You accept? Veltarn's voice carried surprise. Yes. We will withdraw from all contested sectors. We will bring our people home. You will have what you want. War leader. Korth of the hegemony laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Just like that? No demands, no negotiations, no threats? Deho turned to face the massive alien. What would be the point? You have made your decision. You have the power to enforce it. Fighting you would only bring death to my people. Least the humans know their place, sneered another voice from the upper seats. Deho ignored the insult. He looked back at Veltarn. We will need 6 months to complete the withdrawal. Some of our settlements are very far from Earth. You have 1 year, Veltarn replied. 6 months will be enough. Something in the human's tone made the Chancellor pause. There was no fear in Deho's voice, no anger, no desperation, just calm, certainty. Very well. 6 months. Every human presence must be gone from restricted space. Our observers will monitor your progress. Deho bowed slightly. Of course. Is there anything else? That is all. You are dismissed. The human turned and walked toward the chamber's exit. His footsteps echoed in the vast space. As he reached the doors, he stopped and looked back. Chancellor Veltarn. Yes? When this is over, remember that we chose to leave. Remember that we could have chosen differently. The doors closed behind him before anyone could respond. In his private chambers, Deho activated his secure communication system. The encryption was human-made, unbreakable by any technology the Council possessed. Within moments, President Heejin's face appeared on the screen. How did it go? She asked. As expected. We have 6 months. Heejin nodded. She was younger than Deho, but her eyes held the same calm determination. Operation Silent Return is ready to begin. Send the signal. Across human space, the message went out simultaneously to every colony, every research station, every military outpost. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of centuries of preparation. Come home. Bring everything. On the farming. World of New Seoul, Governor Ji-hoon received the message while inspecting the grain harvest. He closed his eyes for a moment, then began giving orders. The evacuation plans had been ready for years. Every colonist knew their role. At Research Station Omega, orbiting a distant star, Dr. Bora shut down her experiments carefully. The work of decades was being packed into specialized containers. Nothing would be left behind. Nothing that the aliens could understand anyway. Admiral Tae-hyun, commanding the human fleet, began the delicate process of withdrawing his ships. To alien observers, it looked like a retreat. They saw cargo vessels being loaded with civilians and equipment. They saw military escorts preparing for the long journey home. What they did not see were the careful modifications being made to the abandoned stations. They did not notice the small devices being placed in key locations. They did not detect the energy signatures that pulsed briefly before each facility went dark. On Earth, President Hae-jin addressed the world. Her speech was broadcast to every human settlement in the galaxy. My fellow humans, today we begin a new chapter in our species' history. The Galactic Council has demanded our withdrawal from the wider galaxy. We will comply with their demands, but not because we are weak. We retreat because we are wise. She paused, looking directly into the camera. For 300 years we have explored the stars. We have built colonies and established research stations. We have learned and grown and discovered wonders beyond. Imagination! Now it is time to come home and put that knowledge to use. The president's voice grew stronger. The council believes they are ending humanity's expansion. They are wrong. They are helping us begin our true journey. When we are ready, when we are united, when we have unlocked the secrets we have found among the stars, then we will show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. In the depths of space, the Great Withdrawal began. Human ships streamed toward Earth like a river flowing backward. To the alien observers, it looked like defeat. They saw a species accepting its limitations and returning to its small corner of the galaxy. They were watching the most important mistake of their lives. As the first convoy of human ships crossed into the Sol system, something waited for them there. Something that had been building for decades, hidden beneath Earth's cities and inside its mountains. Something that would change everything. The retreat had begun. And with it, humanity's true destiny was about to unfold. 6 months later, the last human transport ship crossed into Sol system space. Admiral Tae-hyun stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the massive convoy of vessels spread out behind him. Thousands of ships carried millions of humans home from across the galaxy. The Great Withdrawal was complete. Admiral, his communications officer said, "We are receiving final confirmation from all sectors. Every human installation has been evacuated." Tae-hyun nodded. "Send the message to the council. Tell them we have honored our agreement." The message went out on all frequencies, broadcast to every alien listening post in the galaxy. Admiral Tae-hyun's voice was calm and formal as he spoke. The words that would change everything. "This is Admiral Tae-hyun of the Terran Defense Fleet. Humanity has completed its withdrawal as requested by the Galactic Council. All human settlements, research stations, and military outposts beyond the Sol system have been abandoned. Sol system is now under human sovereignty. Any vessel entering our space will be considered hostile." As the message ended, something incredible happened. A barrier of pure energy suddenly surrounded the entire solar system. It stretched from beyond Pluto's orbit all the way to the inner planets, creating a perfect sphere around humanity's home. The barrier shimmered with colors that had no names, pulsing with power that made alien sensors scream warnings. On the hegemony observation ship positioned just outside the barrier, Captain Zektar stared at his readings in disbelief. "What is that thing?" His science officer, a young male named Vorlin, shook his head. "I have never seen anything like it, Captain. Our sensors cannot penetrate it. It appears to be some kind of defensive shield, but the energy readings are impossible." Zektar tried to contact his fleet commander, but his communications could not reach through the barrier. He ordered a probe to be launched toward the strange energy field. The small device approached the barrier, transmitted a brief burst of data, then simply vanished. "Where did it go?" Zektar demanded. "Unknown, sir. It just stopped existing." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as alien forces tried to understand what humanity had done. The barrier was perfect, seamless, and completely impenetrable. Nothing they tried could break through it or even scratch its surface. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions began immediately. Chancellor Veltarn paced before the assembled representatives, his blue skin darker with stress. "Explain to me how a primitive species created a barrier that our best technology cannot penetrate," he said to the Council's chief scientist. Kwang Su, a member of the collective, chimed softly as he accessed his shared memory banks. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. The humans appear to have developed defensive technology far beyond what we believed them capable of. War Leader Korth slammed his massive fist on his chair. It does not matter what kind of shield they have built. We can break anything given enough firepower. Can we? Kwang Su asked quietly. Our calculations suggest that S.H.I.E.L.D. could withstand the combined fleet power of the entire council. The chamber fell silent. That was not what anyone wanted to. Here, then we wait, Veltarn said finally. They cannot hide behind their barrier forever. Eventually they will need resources from outside their system. When they do, we will be ready. But waiting was easier said than done. As the days passed, strange reports began coming in from former human territories. The abandoned colonies and research stations were not as empty as they appeared. Commander Yulka of the Hegemony Survey Fleet was the first to encounter something unusual. Her ships had claimed the former human research station orbiting Kepler 442b. The facility appeared, completely abandoned, just as expected. But when her teams went inside, they found something impossible. The laboratories are still active, her chief engineer reported over the comm. Power is running through systems that should have been shut down months ago. The equipment is more advanced than anything in our databases. Yulka frowned. Show me. The engineering team transmitted video feeds from inside the station. Yulka watched in amazement as her people moved through laboratories filled with devices she could not identify. Machines hummed with quiet efficiency. Displays showed data in languages her computers could not translate. There, her engineer said, pointing to a security monitor. Watch this recording from the day the humans left. The screen showed a human female in a white coat. She moved calmly through the laboratory, making final adjustments to various machines. At the center of the room, she placed a small black device on a pedestal. The device began to glow with soft blue light. Dr. Bora, Yulka read from the nameplate on the woman's coat. What did you leave us? Her engineer approached the glowing device with a scanner. The moment the scanner touched the object, every system on every ship in Yulka's fleet went dead. Emergency power failed, life support stopped, communications died. For 3 terrifying hours, her people floated helplessly in space while their ships remained completely powerless. When the systems finally came back online, the black device was gone. In its place was a small message written in perfect hegemony. Script. Some gifts are not meant to be opened. Similar incidents began happening across former human space. The abandoned mining station at Wolf 359 was found to contain machines that could apparently transmute matter at the atomic level. When alien scientists tried to study them, the machines simply vanished, leaving behind only empty rooms and the faint smell of ozone. The research facility on Proxima Centauri b contained what appeared to be a complete database of genetic information from thousands of species. But every time alien computers tried to access the data, the information changed, showing impossible evolutionary paths and biological structures that violated known science. Most disturbing of all was the discovery on Gliesa 667c, the human agricultural colony there had left behind vast greenhouses filled with plants that should not have been able to exist, trees that grew in perfect geometric patterns, flowers that seemed to respond to thoughts, grain that analyzed itself and modified its own genetic structure. The alien biologist who tried to take samples found himself unable to leave the greenhouse. Every time he tried to exit, he found himself back at the entrance with no memory of how he had gotten there. It took 3 days for his rescue team to extract him, and when they did, he kept insisting that the plants had been trying to teach him something. Kwang Su compiled all the reports and presented them to the council. His crystalline form flickered with concern as he shared his findings. The evidence suggests that humanity's technological advancement was far greater than we realized, he said. These abandoned facilities contain technology that is decades, perhaps centuries, ahead of our own capabilities. Impossible, War Leader Korth growled. We monitored their development closely. Their ships were primitive. Their weapons were basic. Their colonies used simple farming techniques. What we saw was what they wanted us to see, Kwang-Su replied. But consider this. Every human settlement was established near the ruins of ancient civilizations. Every research station was built on sites of archaeological significance. What if they were not randomly expanding? What if they were following a plan? The implications of that suggestion made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Chancellor Veltarn studied the reports with growing unease. Are you suggesting that humanity has been deceiving us for centuries? I am suggesting that we may have underestimated them greatly. As if to prove his point, new reports arrived. Daily, human abandoned facilities across the galaxy were activating on their own, performing unknown functions that interfered with alien operations, mining equipment that converted asteroid rock into unknown alloys, communication arrays that broadcast signals into deep space using technologies that should not have worked. Most concerning were the energy readings. Every former human site was drawing power from sources that alien science could not identify. The power levels were enormous, far beyond what should have been possible from any known technology. What were they really doing out there? Veltarn asked his advisors. Nobody had an answer. Meanwhile, inside the Sol system, humanity was busy. The barrier that protected them was not just a shield, it was a construction zone. Ships moved between the planets carrying materials and equipment. Massive structures rose from the surfaces of Mars and the Moon. Strange energies pulsed between Earth and its satellite stations. President Haye-Jin stood in the command center deep beneath the capital city, watching displays that showed the progress of projects across the solar system. Her advisors moved around her with quiet efficiency, coordinating efforts that had been planned for decades. The integration is proceeding ahead of schedule, reported Dr. So Young, the director of the Human Advancement Project. All recovered data has been processed. The final phase can begin whenever you give the order. Haye-Jin nodded. Not yet. Let them wonder a little longer. Let them realize how little they actually knew about us. Outside the barrier, alien fleets gathered. But inside the Sol system, humanity was preparing for something that would change the galaxy forever. The retreat was almost over. Soon it would be time to move forward. 2 years had passed since humanity disappeared behind their strange barrier. The Galactic Council's frustration grew with each failed attempt to penetrate Sol system. Their most powerful weapons did nothing. Their best scientists could not understand the technology. Their spies could not get through. On the archaeological world of Vega Prime, young researcher Min-Ho worked alone in the ruins of an ancient city. He was human, one of the few who had been studying outside Sol system when the barrier went up. The council allowed him to continue his work, thinking one isolated human posed no threat. They were wrong. Min-Ho had been studying the same ruins for 5 years, but only now was he beginning to understand what he had found. The carved symbols on the walls were not just decorations, they were instructions. The strange metal structures were not just buildings, they were machines. As he traced his fingers along a series of symbols, Min-Ho felt a slight vibration in the stone. Something was activating. Deep beneath the ruins, lights began to glow for the first time in millions of years. "Incredible," he whispered, watching as holographic displays materialized in the air around him. The images showed star maps, technical diagrams, and flowing text in a language that somehow, impossibly, he could read. The beings who built this place called themselves the Builders. They had shaped the galaxy millions of years ago, creating wonders that current civilizations could barely imagine. But they had not simply vanished as everyone believed. They had evolved beyond physical existence, leaving behind a test for their successors. Minho's hands shook as he read the ancient records. The Builders had scattered their technology across the galaxy, hidden in ruins and buried in forgotten worlds. They had created a path for the species that would come after them, a series of challenges and discoveries that would lead the worthy to transcendence. The test was simple in concept, but incredible in scope. A species had to prove three things: curiosity, wisdom, and unity. They had to seek knowledge for its own sake. They had to choose preservation over destruction, and they had to work together instead of conquering others. Most species failed the test without ever knowing it existed. They found builder ruins and saw only resources to exploit. They discovered ancient technology and used it only for war. They encountered other species and chose conflict over cooperation. But humanity had been different. Minho pulled up a galactic map on the holographic display, then overlaid it with the locations of all human colonies established over the past 3 centuries. His breath caught in his throat. Every single human settlement had been built near builder ruins. Every research station had been studying their technology. Every exploration mission had followed paths that led to more ancient sites. Humanity had not been expanding randomly through the galaxy. They had been following a predetermined course, unlocking builder secrets one discovery at a time. And they had done it without even realizing what they were doing. "We passed the test," Minho said aloud, his voice echoing in the ancient chamber. "We actually passed the test." The holographic display shifted, showing him images of human colonies and research stations. In each case, human scientists had studied builder technology with pure curiosity, seeking to understand rather than simply exploit. They had preserved ancient sites instead of destroying them. They had shared their discoveries freely among all human settlements, and when faced with the ultimate challenge, when forced to choose between unity and conflict, humanity had chosen to retreat rather than fight a war that would have devastated the galaxy. Minho realized that every strange device left behind in abandoned human facilities was actually builder technology, integrated with human innovation over centuries of careful research. The aliens trying to study these devices were seeing the results of humanity's long apprenticeship under the builder legacy. Meanwhile, on the council world of Hegemon Prime, war leader Korth was losing patience. 2 years of waiting had produced nothing but more questions. The human barrier remained impenetrable. The abandoned human facilities continued to behave in impossible ways. And worst of all, other species were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about the Council's handling of the situation. "We cannot wait any longer," Korth declared to the emergency session. "If we cannot enter their system, we will destroy it entirely." Chancellor Veltarn looked uncomfortable. "War leader, our own scientists have warned that attacking the barrier directly could have unpredictable consequences." "Then we do not attack the barrier," Korth replied. "We bypass it. Planet-killer weapons can crack a star. If Sol goes nova, their precious barrier will not save them. The suggestion sent murmurs of shock through the chamber. Destroying an entire star system was considered an act of ultimate desperation. But Korth's logic was simple. Humanity had humiliated the Council by defying their authority. That could not be allowed to stand. Kwang Su flickered with distress. War leader, surely there must be another way. The loss of life would be enormous. They chose isolation, Korth growled. Let them have it permanently. The vote was close, but fear and wounded pride won over caution. The Council authorized the deployment of their most terrible weapons. Fleets from 12 species would converge on Sol system carrying star-killer devices. If humanity would not submit, they would be eliminated entirely. Inside the Sol system, President Haye-Jin received the aliens' final ultimatum with the same calm that Ambassador Dae-ho had shown years before. The message was simple and brutal. Surrender unconditionally or face total annihilation. Her response was equally measured. You have 24 hours to withdraw your fleets. This is your only warning. The alien commanders laughed at her message. What could one isolated species do against the combined might of the galaxy? Their weapons could crack planets and shatter stars. No defense could stand against such power. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Dr. So Young stood in the control center beneath Earth's surface, watching as massive structures rose from hidden chambers around the planet. These were not weapons in any traditional sense. They were something far more sophisticated, built from technologies that humanity had spent centuries learning to understand. All systems are online, she reported to President Haye-Jin. The integration is complete. Similar. Reports came in from Mars, Luna, and the outer planets. Across the solar system, humanity's true preparations were finally revealed. The barrier that had protected them was not just a shield. It had been a chrysalis, allowing humanity to transform while hidden from alien eyes. The alien fleet arrived at Sol system with confidence and overwhelming firepower. 12 species had contributed their best ships and most powerful weapons. The combined armada could have conquered any civilization in the galaxy. Admiral Zeth Cole of the Hegemony commanded the fleet from his massive flagship. He studied the barrier around Sol with contempt. Soon it would not matter how strong their shield was. His star-killer weapons would ignite Sol itself, turning the entire system into a nuclear furnace. Begin the attack, he ordered. The weapons fired simultaneously, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust or destabilizing a star's core. The energy beams converged on Sol, carrying enough destructive power to end a civilization. The beams struck the barrier and simply vanished, not reflected, not absorbed, but completely gone as if they had never existed. Impossible, Zeth Cole breathed. Fire again! Full power! The second salvo was even more intense than the first. Every ship in the fleet contributed its most powerful weapons. The energy output was enough to sterilize entire worlds. Again, the beams struck the barrier and vanished without effect. Admiral, his sensor officer called out, voice tight with fear. Something is happening to the barrier. Zeth Cole looked at his displays and felt his confidence crumble. The barrier was not just absorbing their attacks, it was growing. With each weapon strike, the energy field expanded outward, moving toward the alien fleet. All ships, retreat to safe distance, he ordered. But it was too late. The barrier expanded past the fleet's position, engulfing every alien vessel in its strange energy. Ships found themselves trapped in a space where physics operated differently. Their weapons would not fire. Their engines would not start. Their communications reached only empty void. Inside the barrier, Admiral Zethkol watched in horror as his instruments showed impossible readings. Space itself seemed to be changing around them, following rules that violated everything he knew about the universe. Then the human ships appeared. They emerged from the inner solar system like nothing Zethkol had ever seen. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend space around them, moving without any visible propulsion. Their hulls bore markings that combined human writing with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The lead ship opened a communication channel. A human voice spoke calmly across the void. "This is Captain Dongwu of the Terran vessel Harmony. You demanded our withdrawal. We complied. Now we offer you the same choice we were given: withdraw or face consequences." Zethkol stared at the impossible ships surrounding his trapped fleet. These were not the primitive human vessels he had expected. These were something new, something that combined human innovation with technologies that should not have existed. "What have you become?" he whispered. Captain Dongwu's reply was quiet but filled with certainty. "What we were always meant to be." Admiral Zethkol's response was exactly what Captain Dongwu expected. The alien commander ordered his fleet to attack, even though their weapons had already proven useless. Pride and desperation made beings do predictable things. The alien armada fired everything they had at the human ships: plasma cannons, particle beams, nuclear missiles, and exotic energy weapons all converged on the sleek vessels. The firepower was enough to destroy entire fleets under normal circumstances. The weapons passed through the human ships like they were made of light and shadow. Not a single shot connected. The human vessels continued their slow, graceful approach as if nothing had happened. "Impossible," Zethkol muttered, watching his most powerful weapons fail completely. "What kind of shields are those?" His science officer, a young female named Kirith, checked her readings with shaking hands. "Admiral, I am not detecting any shields at all. The ships appear to be phasing in and out of normal space." "That is impossible." "Yes, sir. But that appears to be what they are doing." Captain Dongwu's voice came across the communication channel again, still calm and measured. "You seem confused by our technology. Perhaps an explanation would help." The space around the human ships began to shimmer. Suddenly, every alien vessel in the fleet found itself flooded with information, not through their communication systems, but directly into their computers. Millions of files downloaded in seconds, containing data that their scientists had been seeking for centuries. Zethkol watched in amazement as his computers processed the incoming information. Technical specifications for technologies beyond his understanding. Historical records of civilizations that had vanished before his species had discovered fire. And most importantly, the complete history of the beings called the Builders. "By the Void," Kirith whispered. "Admiral, you need to see this." The data painted a picture that changed everything. The Builders had not simply been an advanced species. They had been teachers, guiding younger civilizations toward greater understanding. They had scattered their knowledge across the galaxy, waiting for species that could prove themselves worthy of the gift. The test was elegant in its simplicity. Species had to demonstrate curiosity, wisdom, and unity. They had to seek knowledge for understanding rather than power. They had to preserve rather than destroy. They had to cooperate rather than conquer. Most species failed without ever knowing they were being tested. They found builder ruins and saw only resources. They discovered ancient technology and used it for war. They met other species and chose conflict over cooperation. But humanity had been different from the beginning. The data showed 3 centuries of human exploration, but from a new perspective. Every human colony had been established near builder sites, but not by accident. The ancient AI systems had been guiding human expansion, leading them from discovery to discovery. Each archaeological find had built upon the last, creating a path toward greater understanding. Human scientists had studied builder technology with pure curiosity. They had preserved ancient sites with reverence. They had shared their discoveries freely among all human settlements. And when faced with the ultimate test, they had chosen retreat over war. Zethkol realized with growing horror that the Galactic Council had been the villains in this story. By forcing humanity to withdraw, they had unknowingly helped humanity complete the final test. The retreat had not been defeat, it had been graduation. "Captain Dongwu," he said over the communication channel, "what you are showing us. Is it true?" "Every word," the human replied. "Your species and others have had the same opportunities. Builder ruins exist in your space too. But you chose to exploit rather than understand. You chose to conquer rather than learn." The implications hit Zethkol like a physical blow. His own species had discovered builder sites decades ago. But instead of studying them with curiosity, the hegemony had strip-mined them for exotic materials. Instead of preserving the ancient knowledge, they had used builder technology to build bigger weapons. They had failed the test completely. "What happens now?" Zethkol asked, though he feared the answer. "Now you have a choice, the same choice we were given." Captain Dongwu's ship moved closer to the alien flagship. As it approached, its hull became transparent, revealing the interior. Zethkol gasped at what he saw inside. The human crew was there, but they were changed. Their eyes held depths that seemed to contain galaxies. When they moved, reality seemed to bend around them. They were still recognizably human, but they had become something more. "We are what the builders intended," Dongwu explained. "Not gods, but gardeners. Not conquerors, but teachers. We have inherited their responsibility to guide other species toward the same understanding we have achieved." Admiral Insu appeared beside Dongwu, though Zethkol remembered him as Admiral Tae-hyun from intelligence reports. The transformation was obvious. The human's consciousness had been enhanced beyond normal limitations, expanded to encompass understanding that would have been impossible before. "Your species can join us," Insu said. "All species can. The path is open to anyone willing to. Choose wisdom over power, cooperation over conquest." "And if we refuse?" Zethkol asked. "Then you remain as you are, free to continue your current existence, but cut off from the greater community we are building." The offer was generous, but Zethkol understood the underlying reality. Humanity now controlled technology that made his entire fleet obsolete. They could enforce their will across the galaxy if they chose, but instead they were offering partnership. It was exactly what the builders would have done. "I need to consult with my government," Zethkol said. "Of course. But first you should see what we are offering." The space around the alien fleet began to change. The strange physics that had trapped them shifted again, and suddenly they could see beyond the barrier that surrounded Sol system. What they saw took their breath away. Earth had been transformed. The planet glowed with soft light, covered in structures that seemed to grow rather than being built. Cities floated in the atmosphere, connected by bridges of solidified energy. The moon had been reshaped into a perfect sphere, its surface covered with gardens that could be seen from space. Mars was green and blue, with oceans and forests where there had been only red desert. The asteroid belt had been reorganized into a series of habitable worlds, each one a perfect ecosystem. Even the outer planets showed signs of impossible transformation. "This is what builder technology can accomplish," Dongwu explained. "Not weapons of destruction, but tools of creation. We can reshape dead worlds into gardens. We can extend life indefinitely. We can travel between stars as easily as walking across a room." Zethkol stared at the wonders surrounding him. His species had spent millennia fighting over resources that were suddenly meaningless. With builder technology, any world could be made habitable. Any system could be transformed into paradise. "Why are you showing us this?" he asked. "Because isolation serves no one," Insu replied. "The builders did not intend for their successors to rule alone. They wanted us to teach others, to lift up the entire galaxy." The communication channels crackled as reports came in from across the alien fleet. Every ship was receiving the same information, seeing the same impossible sights. Zethkol could hear the wonder and fear in his officers' voices as they tried to process what they were experiencing. But not everyone was ready to accept the new reality. War Leader Korth's voice cut across the communication channels from his flagship. "This is deception! Humans cannot possess such technology! It is impossible!" "War Leader," Zethkol tried to interrupt, but Korth continued his rant. "They are using illusions to confuse us. These displays are false. I will not be fooled by human trickery." Korth's massive ship broke formation, charging directly at Captain Dongwu's vessel. The alien commander had armed his ship's most powerful weapon, a device that could crack moons. The weapon fired at point-blank range. The energy beam struck Dongwu's ship and simply ceased to exist, not reflected or absorbed, but completely gone. The human vessel remained exactly where it was, unchanged and undamaged. "War Leader Korth," Dongwu said sadly, "you have made your choice." What happened next was not violence in any traditional sense. Korth's ship simply began to fade, becoming less real with each passing second. Within moments, it had vanished completely, as if it had never existed. "Where did he go?" Zethkol demanded. "Nowhere," Insu replied. "And everywhere. He chose to reject reality, so reality rejected him. He exists now in a space between dimensions where his anger cannot harm anyone." The casual display of power silenced every alien commander in the fleet. They were not dealing with an advanced species. They were dealing with beings who could manipulate the fundamental nature of existence itself. 24 hours, Dongwu reminded them. Choose wisely. The Galactic Council's response was exactly what humanity expected. Fear and pride drove them to make the worst possible decision. Chancellor Veltarn's message came through clearly to every ship in the trapped alien fleet. All commanders, ignore human deceptions. These displays are illusions designed to break our resolve. Attack with all available firepower. Show them that the Council does not bow to primitive species. Admiral Zethkol closed his eyes in despair. His own leaders were about to doom their entire civilization out of stubborn pride. "Chancellor," he tried to respond, "you do not understand what we are facing here. This is not deception. The humans have capabilities beyond anything we imagined." "Admiral Zethkol, you are relieved of command. Vice Admiral Torgan will take over your fleet immediately." Zethkol felt his command codes transfer to his second-in-command. Torgan was young, ambitious, and completely loyal to the Council's authority. He would follow orders without question, even if those orders led to disaster. "All ships, Torgan announced over the fleet communications. "Prepare for full assault. Target the largest human vessel. Maximum firepower on my command." Captain Dongwu listened to the alien communications with sadness. He had hoped they would choose differently, but centuries of studying galactic politics had taught humanity to expect the worst from established powers. "Captain," his communications officer Jiwoo said quietly, "they are really going to attack us." "Yes, they are. And we are going to teach them why that is a mistake." The alien fleet opened fire with everything they had. Thousands of weapons discharged, simultaneously creating a storm of destructive energy that would have vaporized entire planets. The combined firepower of 12 species converged on the human ships. Captain Dongwu did not bother to dodge or defend. The weapons passed through, his vessel harmlessly, as if it existed in a different dimension. But this time, the humans did not simply absorb the attack, they responded. What happened next was not violence in any traditional sense. It was education. Every alien ship in the fleet suddenly found itself flooded with information, but not through their computers this time. The knowledge went directly into the minds of every crew member aboard every vessel. Admiral Zethkol gasped as centuries of galactic history unfolded in his consciousness. He saw the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxy. He witnessed species that had passed the Builder test and transcended to higher existence. He experienced the joy of discovery and the tragedy of species that chose conquest over cooperation. But most importantly, he saw the truth about his own civilization and all the others in the Galactic Council. The hegemony had encountered Builder ruins 40 years ago on the world of Kethmaran. Instead of studying them with respect, they had strip-mined the site for exotic materials. The ancient structures were destroyed to make weapons. The precious knowledge was lost forever. The collective had found a complete Builder library on their home world, containing millions of years of accumulated wisdom. They had used it to create better methods of enslaving other species. The library was eventually destroyed in a civil war over who would control its power. Every member species of the Council had failed the Builder test in spectacular fashion. They had been given opportunities for transcendence and chosen domination. Instead, they had been offered wisdom and chosen ignorance. The knowledge transfer lasted only minutes, but it felt like lifetimes. When it ended, every alien in the fleet understood exactly what they had lost and what humanity had gained. "Now you know the truth," Captain Dongwu said, his voice carrying across all communication channels. "Every species in this galaxy has been given the same opportunities. The Builders did not play favorites. They scattered their gifts equally, hoping that someone would prove worthy of their legacy." Vice Admiral Torgan tried to maintain his aggression, but his voice shook as he spoke. "Even if this is true, it changes nothing. The Council's authority cannot be challenged." "The Council's authority was always an illusion," Admiral Insu replied. "You ruled through fear and superior numbers. But what happens when you encounter a species that cannot be intimidated and cannot be outnumbered?" To demonstrate his point, Insu gestured toward empty space. Suddenly, the area around the alien fleet filled with human ships, not dozens or hundreds, but thousands upon thousands. They appeared from nowhere, materializing out of dimensions that the aliens could not perceive. Each vessel was unique, displaying technologies that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. Some ships appeared to be made of living crystal. Others looked like they were constructed from compressed starlight. A few seemed to exist as pure mathematical concepts given physical form. How many ships do you have? Torgan whispered in horror. As many as we need, Insu replied. When you can manipulate matter and energy at the fundamental level, building new vessels becomes a matter of thought rather than industry. The display was overwhelming, but it was only the beginning. The human ships began to demonstrate their capabilities, performing feats that should have been impossible. One vessel reached out with beams of structured gravity and gently moved an entire moon from one orbit to another. A second ship opened what appeared to be a doorway in space itself, revealing a view of a distant galaxy millions of light-years away. A third created an artificial star from nothing but empty space, then shaped it into a perfect geometric form. This is what the builders intended, Captain Dongwu explained. Not weapons of war, but tools of creation. Not conquest of others, but mastery of reality itself. The demonstration continued for hours. Human ships terraformed dead asteroids into garden worlds in minutes. They created stable wormholes that connected distant star systems. They manipulated time itself, showing the aliens glimpses of possible futures. But the most impressive demonstration was also the gentlest. One human vessel approached a damaged alien ship that had been crippled in an earlier battle. Instead of destroying it or demanding surrender, the human ship extended streams of energy that began repairing the damage. The alien crew watched in amazement as their hull plating reformed, their engines rebuilt themselves, and their life support systems upgraded to more efficient designs. Within an hour, their ship was not just repaired, but improved beyond its original specifications. "Why?" asked the alien captain over an open channel. "Why help us after we tried to kill you?" "Because that is what the builders would have done," Dongwu replied. "They were teachers, not conquerors. They wanted to lift up other species, not destroy them." The gesture had a profound effect on the alien fleet. Ship after ship began surrendering, their crews overwhelmed by the generosity they had been shown. These were not monsters or invaders. These were beings who had achieved something incredible and wanted to share it with others, but not everyone was ready to accept the new reality. Chancellor Veltarn's voice cut across the communication channels from the Council homeworld. "This is your final warning, humans. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. We have weapons you cannot imagine." Captain Dongwu sighed. "Chancellor, we have tried to show you a better path. We have offered partnership instead of conquest. But if you insist on using your weapons, we will not stop you." "What do you mean you will not stop us?" Veltarn demanded. "Fire your weapons, Chancellor. Use everything you have. Show the galaxy what your civilization values most." The challenge was clear. Veltarn could either back down and lose face before the entire galaxy, or he could launch his ultimate weapons and reveal the true nature of the Council's power. Pride made the choice for him. All Council fleets, fire the Nova bombs, target the Sol system, end this threat once and for all. Across the galaxy, the most terrible weapons ever created began their final countdown. Devices capable of destroying entire star systems charged their power cores. The combined firepower was enough to crack reality itself. Admiral Zethkol watched the countdown with growing dread. His own species had contributed 3 Nova bombs to the arsenal. In moments they would fire, and an entire system would die. "Captain Dongwu," he called out desperately, "you have to defend yourselves. Those weapons will destroy everything." "We know," Dongwu replied calmly. "And when they do, every species in the galaxy will see who the real threat to civilization has always been." The weapons fired simultaneously from a dozen different worlds. Beams of destructive energy raced toward Sol system at faster-than-light speeds. Each one carried enough power to ignite a star or crack a planet's core. The human ships made no move to intercept them. They simply waited as if they were curious to see what would happen next. The Nova bombs struck Sol system and vanished, without effect, absorbed by the same barrier that had protected humanity for 2 years. But this time, something different happened. The absorbed energy began to spread outward, not as destruction, but as information. Every species in the galaxy suddenly received a complete recording of the attack, showing exactly who had tried to commit genocide and who had chosen to defend rather than retaliate. The political consequences were immediate and devastating for the Council. The recording of the Council's attempted genocide spread across the galaxy in moments. Every inhabited world, every space station, every ship received the same message. They watched Chancellor Veltarn order the use of Nova bombs against an entire star system. They saw humanity choose defense over retaliation, absorbing weapons that could have destroyed civilizations. The political earthquake began immediately. On hegemony worlds, citizens watched their leaders try to murder billions of innocent humans and felt sick with shame. The hegemony had always claimed to stand for order and justice. Now everyone could see what their version of justice really meant. The collective's member species began disconnecting from their shared network, refusing to be associated with attempted genocide. Worlds that had been part of the collective for centuries declared independence within hours of seeing the recording. Even the Council's smaller member species turned against their leadership. The beings who had voted to destroy humanity found themselves facing revolution on their own worlds. Chancellor Veltarn tried to maintain control from his fortress on the Council homeworld, but his authority crumbled with each passing hour. Species after species withdrew from the Galactic Council, declaring neutrality or openly supporting humanity's right to exist. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kwang Su, the collective's chief scientist, had been studying the human recordings with growing fascination. The technology displayed by the human ships was incredible, but there was something else in the data that caught his attention: the biological weapons. Hidden in the Nova bomb attack had been a secondary payload, something the Council leadership had not mentioned to their own people. Weapons designed to target human DNA specifically, released simultaneously across every world where humans had once lived. It was an act of pure spite, intended to poison humanity's former territories, even if the main attack failed. But as Kwang Su analyzed the weapon's design, he realized something incredible. The biological agents were not just targeting human DNA. They were interacting with builder technology that humanity had left behind in their abandoned facilities. The combination was creating something unprecedented. "Impossible," Kwang Su whispered as he studied the data. "This should not work." But it was working. The biological weapons, designed to cause death, were instead triggering a transformation. The builder nanomachines left in human facilities were using the genetic material to create something new, not death, but evolution. On worlds across the galaxy, the abandoned human research stations began to glow with new energy. Plants grew where there had been only metal and stone. Water flowed in places where none had existed before. The facilities were transforming themselves into living ecosystems, guided by the interaction between human genetics and builder technology. Dr. So Young, monitoring the situation from Earth, watched the readings with amazement. "The Council's final attack has completed the builder legacy," she reported to President Hae-Jin. They have accidentally created a galaxy-wide network of enhanced consciousness. The biological weapons had been designed to spread quickly, and they had succeeded beyond their creators' wildest fears. But instead of bringing death, they were bringing connection. Every world touched by the weapons found itself linked to a vast network of shared knowledge and understanding. Species that had been enemies for millennia suddenly found themselves able to understand each other's thoughts and motivations. Ancient conflicts that had raged for centuries dissolved as beings realized how similar their hopes and dreams really were. The transformation was not instant or complete. Individual consciousness remained intact, but it was now part of something larger, a collective awareness that preserved personal identity while sharing knowledge and wisdom across the stars. President Hai Jin addressed the galaxy one final time from her office beneath Earth's surface. But now her words reached not just communication devices, but the enhanced consciousness of billions of beings across thousands of worlds. Citizens of the galaxy, she began, what has happened today was not planned by humanity. We did not seek this transformation, but we will help guide it, as the builders guided us. Her words carried weight beyond their simple meaning. Through the enhanced network, every being could feel her sincerity, her genuine desire to help rather than rule. The age of separate species competing for resources is over, she continued. What emerges now is something new, a community of consciousness that spans the galaxy, where knowledge is shared freely and conflicts are resolved through understanding rather than violence. The former Galactic Council chambers on Hegemon Prime stood empty, their authority dissolved by the very actions they had taken to preserve it. But the building would not remain empty for long. Ambassador Day-Ho, the same human who had accepted the Council's ultimatum 3 years earlier, walked through the abandoned halls with quiet satisfaction. The chambers would be repurposed as a coordination center for the new Galactic Federation, not a government in the traditional sense, but a network of cooperation guided by enhanced wisdom. It is fitting, he said to his aide, looking at the empty seats where the council members had once sat in judgment. They demanded our retreat, and in doing so, they made possible our greatest advance. The transformation was not without its opponents. Chancellor Veltarn, isolated in his fortress and cut off from the enhanced network by his own choice, raged against the new reality. But his words reached only empty rooms. His followers had abandoned him, choosing connection over isolation. War leader Korth, existing somewhere between dimensions after his encounter with Captain Dong-Wu, could only watch as his dreams of conquest crumbled. He had chosen to reject reality, and reality had moved on without him. But for most beings in the galaxy, the change brought something they had never expected: peace. Admiral Zethkol, his consciousness now expanded beyond his previous limitations, finally understood what humanity had always known. True strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to unite. His species had spent millennia fighting over resources that were suddenly meaningless. With builder technology and enhanced cooperation, any world could become paradise. Dr. Kwang Su, his crystalline form now glowing with new understanding, marveled at the elegant solution the universe had provided. The Council's attempt at genocide had inadvertently created the very unity they had fought against. It was, he realized, exactly what the builders would have planned. On the archaeological world where young Min Ho had first discovered the builder records, New researchers arrived daily, but these were not conquerors seeking to exploit ancient knowledge. They were students, eager to learn and understand. Human and alien scientists worked side by side, unraveling mysteries that had puzzled the galaxy for millions of years. The builder ruins across the galaxy began to awaken fully for the first time since their creators had transcended physical existence. Ancient machines that had waited patiently for worthy successors finally found species ready to use their gifts wisely. Captain Dongwu stood on the bridge of his transformed vessel, watching as construction began on new ships designed for exploration. Beyond the galactic rim, the galaxy was united at last, but the universe was vast. Other cosmic communities awaited discovery. Other species who might benefit from the hard-won wisdom of beings who had chosen cooperation over conquest. "Where will we go first?" asked Jiwoo, his communications officer, her own consciousness, enhanced by the same transformation that had elevated all of humanity. "Wherever we are needed," Dongwu replied. "The builders taught us that wisdom shared is wisdom multiplied. Our journey is just beginning." Dr. So Young activated the construction systems that would build humanity's first intergalactic vessels. The technology was incredible, combining human innovation with builder knowledge and the collective wisdom of the entire galaxy. Ships that could travel between galaxies as easily as walking between rooms. But the most important transformation was not technological. It was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that true strength came from unity, not domination. That knowledge, shared freely, was more valuable than resources hoarded jealously. That different species could accomplish together what none could achieve alone. President Hyojin stood in the transformed Sol system, watching as beings from across the galaxy arrived to study and learn. Earth had become a center of education rather than a fortress of isolation. The barrier that had once protected humanity now served as a gateway, welcoming visitors from every corner of the galaxy. The irony was not lost on her. The Council had demanded humanity's retreat, believing it would end the human threat to their established order. Instead, it had begun humanity's greatest advance. The species that had seemed weakest had proven to be the strongest, because they alone understood that the galaxy's greatest treasures were not territories to be conquered, but partnerships to be forged. In his final act as President of Earth, Hyojin signed the charter establishing the Galactic Federation of Conscious Beings. It was not a government in any traditional sense, but a cooperative network guided by shared wisdom and common purpose. Ambassador Dae-ho, now serving as humanity's representative to the enhanced collective, watched the ceremony with quiet pride. His first official act would be to pardon the former council leadership, their attempt at genocide having accidentally birthed a golden age. Even Chancellor Veltarn, isolated and bitter, would eventually be welcomed back when he chose connection over isolation. The Federation's justice was not punishment but education, not revenge but understanding. The story ended where it had begun, with a choice. But now the choice was not between retreat and warfare, but between isolation and cooperation. Between the old galaxy of fear and competition and the new galaxy of wisdom and unity. Humanity's retreat had lasted 3 years. Their influence would last forever.